I brought the Industrial Revolution to a martial arts world. I get reincarnated into a ruthless Marim world, but instead of waking up as an OP martial arts god, I was stuck in a failing blacksmith family with loan sharks threatening to chop off my family's limbs in just 10 days. With zero combat skills and no cheat system to save me, what did I do? I completely broke the ancient economy and brought the modern industrial assembly line to the martial arts world, mass-producing iron weapons and making traditional craftsmen lose their absolute minds during my ruthless corporate takeover. But getting filthy rich put a massive target on my back. To find out what happens next, watch this complete Manhwa recap. They say there is no such thing as a beautiful, peaceful death. I used to think that was just poetic talk, but as these massive headlights charge directly at me, I have to agree. Staring directly at the front bumper of a speeding car is a great way to reevaluate your life choices. With a deafening crunch of metal, my entire world goes completely upside down. My trusty red scooter shatters into pieces. The odd red bead necklace my father left behind flies into the air. I hit the cold asphalt, sliding across the dark pavement, lying there in a growing pool of my own blood. My vision starts to fade. Is this really how it ends? I always thought my life was completely average. I spent 7 years studying for a civil exam in Noryangjin only to end up a 33-year-old delivery guy. My poor mom did everything she could to pay for my tuition and exam fees, working endless shifts from nursing homes to convenience stores after dad died. She passed away last year from pancreatic cancer. All I did was make her life harder. If I die right now and meet her, would she even be proud of me? Suddenly, a strange, warm glow pierces through the darkness. The light is blinding, pushing back the shadows of the empty road. It is coming directly from my father's necklace. Why is my father's keepsake acting like a sci-fi prop all of a sudden? A sharp jolt of raw energy surges through my arm. I don't have anything else in life. Only this necklace. The red bead pulses. I take one final gasp, squeezing the keepsake. It started to glow. And then, everything goes completely quiet. A sudden burst of blinding white light flashes directly above me, pulling me out of the deep sleep. My head feels like it is being split open by an electric drill. I snap my eyes open, gasping for air. I sit up in an unfamiliar wooden bed. Why am I still alive? I was literally on death's door a second ago. The pain in my temple flares up again, sharper this time, like a physical blow. A flood of memories that are not mine start rushing into my brain, and the realization that I am now apparently Zhou Huai. Before I can process this, Gyangong So He, who my new memories tell me is my mother, looks at me in pure joy and yells to the man beside her that I've woken up. Jo Soon, my new father, steps forward with a deeply worried look, asking how I am feeling. Aside from a massive headache, I tell them I'm feeling alright. They both sigh in relief, explaining that I had been groaning in pain for 3 whole days. I just nod, still trying to get used to the fact that I am in a traditional room instead of a hospital intensive care unit. My mother looks at me with gentle, telling me I need to eat something to get my strength back. I notice my father has a grim, incredibly stressed expression on his face. She notices too, quietly asking him if there is still no news from Master Bang. Based on my current memories, Master Bang was the Zhu general who monopolized the interest on salt and iron in Anhui. Father just sighs heavily, muttering about how Master Bang is too busy for small-time folks like us. When she asks what the Hua clan of the sword sect said, his silence says everything. I watch them closely, trying to figure out what is going on. It turns out a smug jerk named Hua Simyong swindled our family blacksmith workshop out of 2,000 silver coins, leaving us completely broke. Talk about a medieval crypto scam. My father tells my mother to take care of me, muttering that he has to go out for a bit. Later that afternoon, I step out into the quiet yard of our family's blacksmith shop. I still don't have any real answers about how or why I ended up in this world. All I know is that my new family consists of a stressed blacksmith father, a kind mother, a sickly younger sister, and an older brother who is basically a walking comedy routine. On the bright side, this new body has some incredible perks. I managed to memorize the entire Cheonja and the Anilex in only 3 months, but there is also a massive, terrifying sea of martial knowledge constantly bubbling up in my mind, far beyond what any normal human should know. Most questionable of all is Sama, a strange title that has imprinted itself in my mind and fills me with an intense, burning anger. Honestly, trying to accept that I died in my past life and woke up here is a lot to handle, and my mind is in absolute chaos. Seriously, what am I supposed to do now? Just how did this happen, and why me? If I want to survive in this cutthroat martial world, I need to figure out a plan, fast. I am no legendary king or god. I am just a guy with 7 years of exam prep and a part-time delivery job. It is not like the manhwa I read, so my best bet is to become a martial arts master. But to do that, I need to find a teacher nearby. Naturally, I decide to check on my older brother Joju Hoon, who is currently shouting and swinging a wooden staff in the yard. I watch him for a few minutes completely speechless. He is swinging that stick with so much enthusiasm, but his form is incredibly sloppy. I am pretty sure my elementary school buddy in the kendo club had better technique than this. He looks less like a master and more like a kid pretending to be a Jedi with a broomstick. He finally stops, sweating and grinning, and asks if I am feeling better. I tell him I can move fine, then ask where he learned that. He proudly beats his chest, bragging that he learned it from his military buddy, Zhang Zam, in exchange for a drink. I can only stare in disbelief. I asked him whether he ever learned anything from an actual master. He gets defensive, yelling that he traveled all over the place to learn martial arts but still hasn't met a real master. I quickly raise my hand and apologize, remembering that he is the genius who actually ran away from home just to learn martial arts. I stroke my chin, wondering if the older legendary masters are really that hard to find. He sigh, quietly muttering that he didn't realize his brother was this stupid, which immediately got me irritated. He starts lecturing me about the legendary masters, posing dramatically as he describes these larger-than-life figures. I guess if even a martial arts freak like him couldn't find them, they must be exceptionally rare. He suddenly grins, asking if I finally want him to teach me. I just wave my hand, walking away and telling him to just do his best. Those fantasy manhwas lied to me. You can't just walk into a forest and stumble upon a legendary master. What a scam. I am completely at a loss about what to do next, but at least I am alive. I didn't want to die back on that cold street, so being here is infinitely better. I tighten my belt and move forward. If I want to survive in this world, I have to make my own way. 2 months have flown by since I woke up in the Central Plains, and honestly, my new daily routine is surprisingly simple. In the mornings, I help my brother gather firewood, then spend my afternoons making charcoal. Sometimes I even handle the occasional customer, but the best part is that food isn't an issue since father somehow got his hands on some silver coins. I still have absolutely no clue where he managed to find that kind of money though, but my peaceful dinner is cut short when mother stares at father in pure disbelief. Father shifts uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze as he confesses he borrowed 60 silver coins from a loan shark. Mother shrieks, her face pale as she realizes all the money we've been living on this past month came from ruthless gangsters. My father tried to end the talk, but she begins to panic, yelling about how they will cut our entire family to pieces if we can't pay them back in 30 days. Father looks down, his jaw clenched as he absorbs her anger. Suddenly, he snaps, shouting that we would have starved to death otherwise, and that the food we are currently eating was bought with that exact money. He tells her to quiet down and just eat, claiming he knew the risks and will deal with it, but the cozy family dinner is officially ruined. I sit there in silence, realizing we are officially trapped in a dead end with no obvious way out. The clinking of chopsticks is the only sound left in the room, making the silence almost deafening. I slowly chew my food, trying to swallow, but the thick, suffocating tension at the table makes it nearly impossible. And then there's the kitchen fireplace, covered in layers of ancient soot and grease. I take a sip of soup, but the stench coming from the kitchen is so bad that the looming debt is suddenly the least of my worries. There is that rancid smell again, hitting me right in the face. Seriously, the hygiene in this house is an absolute nightmare. Just then, father sets his chopsticks down on the table with a loud clack. He leans back, groaning about how long it's been since he's had a decent meal. He makes this wet, disgusting sound and burps out right in front of us. It is incredibly vivid, and I can actually see the food residue flying. I tremble in silent horror, squeezing my eyes shut and praying for him to stop. Right on cue, Yoni skips into the room, proudly boasting to mother that she finally washed her hair after an entire month. Wait, is a monthly wash really something to celebrate in this era? I seriously cannot get used to this medieval lifestyle. I pinch the bridge of my nose, fighting back a wave of nausea as my brain short circuits. That is it. I can't take this anymore. If I don't change things around here, the hygiene will kill me long before the loan sharks do. I find father in the workshop and ask him if we have any stiff animal fur lying around. He looks puzzled but tells me Mo the hunter has tons of wild boar fur he usually throws away for free and offers to grab some. The next morning, the sun rises over our yard. Father dumps a massive bulging sack of coarse boar fur. At first, I only planned on making a few toothbrushes for my family, but looking at this massive pile of material, well, I have nothing better to do, and a side project is a great way to distract myself from our impending doom. I sit down and get to work, drilling small holes into wooden handles and threading the stiff bristles through. It's simple work that doesn't need any complex martial arts techniques. I grab some shears, carefully trimming the uneven wild boar bristles down into a neat straight line. After a bit, I finally hold up my very first completed prototype. Yoni creeps up behind me, blinking her big eyes and asking what weird object I'm making now. I quickly hide it behind my back, telling her it's freezing outside and that she should go back in the house. She gives me a suspicious look, puffing out her cheeks in a silent demand. Then she runs off giggling. What a little rascal. I can't help but smile, feeling a sudden surge of motivation. It is time to mass-produce these things. The morning sun filters through the trees, casting a bright, hopeful light over the workshop. By afternoon, I have a neat stack of finished toothbrushes all tied up in bundles. Father walks in and stares at the wooden pile, his eyes wide in complete confusion. I hand him one, stick it in my own mouth, and tell him to just copy exactly what I'm doing. Suddenly, his eyes fly open, and he is transported into a colorful, flower-filled world of pure freshness. I proudly explain that it is my own invention called a toothbrush, and he stares at it like he's just witnessed a miracle. He freezes for a second, a look of pure shock washing over his face as his business instincts kick in. He casually asks if I thinks we can sell these, and I confidently declares that we've just hit the absolute jackpot. I doesn't even hesitate, grabbing the box of toothbrushes and dragging him out the door toward the local marketplace. We set up a small stall in the heart of the bustling, crowded market square. It takes about 5 seconds for a massive crowd to swarm us, shouting and waving their coins to get their hands on a toothbrush. We throw our fists in the air, cheering at the top of our lungs as our stock completely vanishes. Father is practically vibrating, counting the money bag and yelling that we sold 250 pieces in just 2 hours, earning 5 whole silver coins. He even boasts loudly to our neighboring merchants, making them look incredibly bitter and envious. He grabs my shoulders, frantically listing the raw materials we need to buy in bulk so we can put the entire family to work. If we increase the price slightly, we can easily pull in 80 silver coins of pure profit and pay off the loan sharks. Father pumps his fist, completely drunk on the dream of becoming overnight millionaires. Under Mother's strict, military-like supervision, our entire family stays up all night gluing bristles to wood blocks. We stack them high into neat bundles, our eyes set on a massive target of 3,000 toothbrushes. 2 weeks fly by in a blur of endless manual labor and high hopes. But when Father and I arrive at the market to sell our fresh batch, we freeze in absolute horror, dropping our inventory. Father's face twists in panic as he screams in disbelief at what is happening right in front of us. A smug merchant from the Sanhai Association is standing on a platform, holding up a copycat toothbrush to a massive crowd. They are selling them in massive quantities, shouting about how they eradicate bad smells and charging only 1 iron coin. The copycat even holds up a smaller version, bragging that they have a special model designed specifically for children. He boasts that their toothbrushes have a sturdy iron base that makes them last 3 times longer than ours, completely stealing our entire customer base. I stand there, staring blankly as my mind goes completely numb with shock. That is when the painful realization hits me like a bolt of lightning. Intellectual property rights do not exist in this era. Father turns to me with a pale, sweaty face, desperately asking what we are supposed to do now. I grab him, screaming that I am the one who wants answers, especially since we only have 15 days left before the loan sharks chop our limbs off. We both stand there shivering like ghosts. As the sun sets over the market, a cold reality sinks in. Our only source of income is completely ruined. 10 days. That is exactly how long my new family has left before a gang of loan sharks shows up to chop off our limbs. You know, in those classic isekai manhwa, the protagonist always figures out a cheat code and gets filthy rich in like 3 seconds flat. But what am I supposed to do? I can't exactly invent a steam engine without any railroads, and building a gun is slightly outside my delivery rider skill set. As I stand there contemplating my life choices, the front gate creaks open. My little sister Yoni wanders out, rubbing her eyes and asking for water to wash her hair. I immediately shut that down. She pouts, complaining that I told her the exact same thing yesterday. Look, getting water from the local well is a grueling 2-hour round trip. I tell her she can wash it the day after tomorrow or go fetch the water herself. Right on cue, my older brother Jihoon strides into the yard swinging his wooden training staff. He starts leaping through the air, screaming like an enthusiastic but highly unpolished martial arts movie extra. Honestly, does this guy even have a brain? Our family is on the verge of absolute ruin, yet he is out here playing pretend warrior. Yoni completely ignores me and runs over to him, shouting, "Big brother." She started whispering to him that I've been acting incredibly strange ever since I woke up from my fever. She points out how I managed to calculate our entire toothbrush inventory faster than anyone can take a single sip of tea. Ji-hoon scratches his head, admitting he was completely blown away by my lightning-fast arithmetic. He calls me a little bookworm and asks if I'm practicing some secret merchant calculation method. I can only sigh. It's called basic multiplication, guys, but then it hits me like a ton of bricks. Wait, do the people in this era seriously not know the multiplication table? If simple high school level math is considered a legendary cheat skill here, then my past life as a civil exam crammer might actually pay off. I spent 20 years of my past life studying from elementary school all the way to civil service exams, absorbing centuries of human knowledge through TV and smartphones. And yet, my little sister manages to sum up my entire lifetime of academic struggle as simply being good at talking. I pinch myself. Does this make me an absolute genius in this medieval world? No, I shouldn't let it get to my head. I grab a thick wooden branch, telling Yoni to step back as I drop to my knees in the dirt. I start scratching broad, deep lines directly into the ground. What this era lacks isn't just advanced tech or products. It is the core intellectual frameworks that define modern civilization. I write out the words religion, philosophy, politics, culture, art, technology, and economics. Ji-hoon and Yoni peer over my shoulders, staring at my English scribbles like they're looking at alien hieroglyphics. This is it. The database of modern knowledge in my brain is my ultimate weapon. I just have to use it carefully. I circle the word economics, my mind immediately tracing back to Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. A massive explosion of concepts floods my brain: microeconomics, division of labor, contract theory, utility maximization, and behavioral economics. My eyes flare. I throw my fists up, shouting, "Yeah, this is it!" I march straight into the blacksmith workshop, finding Father hammering away at an anvil. He stops, looking up with a confused frown. I extend my hand dramatically, declaring that he needs to hand over the entire workshop to me immediately. He just stares at me like I've completely lost my mind, asking what kind of nonsense I'm spouting. I pull up a wooden block, sitting opposite him and calmly explaining that I have a plan to save us. He sighs, telling me that running a blacksmith shop requires the soul of a true craftsman. I ignore the lecture and ask him how much more money we can borrow. He nearly jumps out of his boots in shock. He slams his hammer down, screaming that we only have 10 days left before our limbs are chopped off, and I want to double down on our debt. I point at the tools around us, calculating that our anvil alone is worth 50 silvers and the other materials are worth at least 30. I lean in with my best smug, manipulative face, suggesting we use the workshop, the tools, and ourselves as collateral to secure 300 silvers. I raise 3 fingers, casually stating that the high interest rate doesn't matter, since we'll easily be able to repay triple the amount. He is practically vibrating with rage, shouting about how I can be so heartless to suggest putting my own mother and sister on the line. He lifts his massive forging hammer high above his head, ready to flatten me into a pancake. I don't even flinch. I look him dead in the eye, smiling as I promise him we're going to establish the Zhou clan's Iron Kingdom in Anhui province. He freezes mid-swing, sweat dripping down his cheek as he wonders when his quiet son became this terrifyingly bold. In the background, Ji-hoon and Yoni peek through the doorway, whispering that my sickness must have unlocked some weird genius mode. Father slowly lowers his hammer, sighing as he asks if I genuinely have some kind of world-breaking plan in mind. I tell him our first step is to completely stop mining and refining iron ore ourselves. He looks at me in disbelief, asking if I'm seriously unaware of the workshop's financial state. Instead, I tell him we are going to buy pre-refined iron ingots directly from merchants. To explain it simply, ingots are just pre-purified blocks of steel, meaning we don't have to waste days smelting raw ore. Father points out that ingots are incredibly expensive, averaging around 3 silvers apiece. He sets his mallet aside, groaning that I already knew the high cost yet still decided to suggest this crazy idea. I explain that iron plows are our best-selling items, an absolute must-have tool for every single farmer in the region. I propose making the plow our flagship product and slashing its retail price by 30%. Father nearly chokes on his own spit, screaming that selling a 40 silver plow for 28 silvers is complete financial suicide. He yells that making a single iron plow takes a highly skilled blacksmith a full half-month of grueling, non-stop physical labor. I cross my legs, pointing out that half-month estimate includes mining and smelting. If we use pre-refined ingots, he can finish one in 4 days. He gets defensive again, yelling that grappling with the anvil for 4 days just to sell it for a measly profit is worse than a lumberjack's wage. I let out a slow, tired sigh. I look at him and ask, "Who said you would be the one doing all the physical labor?" He blinks, completely caught off guard. Think about it. If we are the only ones selling top-tier giant iron plows for only 28 silvers, farmers from the entire province will swarm our workshop. We will easily capture the entire market. Our target will be mass-producing over 30 iron plows a single day. He stares at me blankly, whispering if I finally lost my mind. I just grin, reassuring him that I'm perfectly sane. I stand up, rolling up my sleeves as I prepare to lay out my ultimate masterclass. We're going to start small by hiring 20 local laborers. Father's jaw drops as he mutters, "Training? We're going to build a modern assembly line factory. First, we set up the charcoal burners to keep our furnaces constantly fueled." Father stands there, completely speechless as he tries to process this crazy plan. Next up are the stokers. Their sole job will be pumping the bellows and maintaining the perfect furnace temperature around the clock. We will have them work in shifts under strict supervision until they can judge the furnace temperature by eye. Father's traditional craftsman brain is officially short-circuiting. Then comes the core of our operation, the forgers. Hammering hot steel is the most grueling work, so we will assign 8 people to work the station in shifts. Father strokes his beard, his face slowly transforming as he begins to see the insane logic behind my words. Finally, we have the molders to pour the liquid iron. Meanwhile, I'll handle the sales, marketing, and entire trade administration. His mouth is wide open, completely dumbfounded by the sheer scale of the organization. I break down the economics. The charcoal burners get 6 coins, stokers 8, forgers 12, and molders 11. The total daily wage is only 2 silvers. He looks down at his hands, sweating profusely as his worldview is shattered into a million pieces. Even if their starting skill level is low, our factory will easily pump out 20 iron plows a day. That is a daily net profit of 2 silvers. In a month, that is 60 silvers. We'll pay off the loan sharks, reinvest, and scale the workshop 20 times over. I clap hands together with a sharp take, flashing him a friendly, glowing red-eyed smile. "Shall I explain it once more, Father?" He stands there shivering like a ghost, looking completely dazed. I smirk inwardly. It seems my flashy presentation completely broke him. Staying up all night watching Apple keynote events in my past life was totally worth it. Father looks at his hammer, muttering that systematically dividing labor doesn't feel like traditional craftsmanship. But 60 silvers a month is 60 silvers. I wait patiently, keeping my gaze steady. I look at him and ask, what is the point of clinging to the pretense of being a solo craftsman when your family's lives are on the line? He swallows hard, staring at me as his eyes widen. His mind is completely blown. His inner voice screams, "I am convincing." He looks up, sweating as he asks if I'm truly confident we can pull this off. I just smile. We are about to start a medieval industrial revolution. I look my sweating father dead in the eye and flash him my most reassuring, trustworthy smile. It is time to let the professional handle the family business. Father swallows hard, his blacksmith pride finally folding as he gives me his full blessing to run the workshop. It is time to bring the magic of the Industrial Revolution to the Central Plains. Henry Ford is about to meet his match, but first, we need a massive pile of startup capital, which brings me directly to Bongtai's local financial heavyweight. I drag Father along with me to the massive, imposing gates of the Fire Dragon Merchant Group. My grand entrance is slightly ruined by the fact that these cheap medieval shoes are absolutely killing my heels. I try to maintain a dignified, visionary face, ignoring the sharp pain with every single step. Father is practically shaking behind me, carrying our entire inventory of tools. Like a dejected pack mule, the gatekeeper gives us a look of profound impatience, telling us to get in line as the young master's third client. I flash him a polite, charming grin, thanking him for the warm welcome. Always be nice to the gatekeepers. We step into the grand courtyard, passing a line of hopeless applicants who look like they've just survived a tax audit. Right on cue, a dejected merchant gets ushered out, looking like he's about to throw up. Yeah, the body language around here is not exactly radiating positive vibes. This negotiation is going to be a struggle. The gatekeeper barks for the next applicant, and I take a deep breath as we step up to the plate. I turn to Father, quietly telling him to wait outside so he doesn't have a heart attack from what I'm about to do. I push open the heavy wooden doors, stepping into the lavishly decorated inner office. Sitting behind a massive desk is Li Zhongjae, the young branch master, looking incredibly smug and elite. I look up, my sharp eyes locking onto him with an expression of mild amusement. Without even asking my name, he casually leans back and asks how much capital I am looking to borrow. I drop my voice to a serious, commanding register, looking him dead in the eye and demanding 300 silvers. He stares at me, his gaze dropping down to my dusty, worn-out shoes with a look of pure, unadulterated skepticism. He doesn't even bother arguing. He simply waves his hand, calling his massive guard to throw me out on my face. I just grin back, telling him he is about to make the single biggest mistake of his entire financial career. He stops, his eyes narrowing as he realizes I am not trembling like a typical borrower. I lean forward, asking him if he is seriously willing to lose out on the most lucrative partnership in the region. I tell him he is about to burn a bridge with the workshop that will soon dominate the entire ironwork market in the province. His interest is piqued. He leans in, asking if I represent one of the massive, legendary corporate workshops. I clasp my hands politely, introducing myself as the second son of the completely obscure Joe Clan blacksmith shop. He slams his hand on the desk with a heavy thud, his friendly expression vanishing in an instant. He roars with rage, asking if some small-town nobody actually had the nerve to walk in here and waste his time. I calmly hold my ground, pointing out that I am fully aware of our lack of fame, which is why this is a collateral transaction. He crosses his arms, looking at me with a cold, calculating frown, demanding to know what I could possibly offer. I reach into my robe, pulling out our family's complete asset register with a confident snap. I lay it out for him. 300 steel anvils, our heavy forging hammers, steel blades, and cast iron frames totaling 90 silvers. I add our actual workshop land and raw wood materials, bringing the entire physical valuation to a solid 150 silvers. He looks over the numbers, dryly pointing out that we are still short by another 150. I stretch my hand out, calmly offering the lives of my entire family as collateral for the remaining balance. His jaw nearly hits the floor as he repeats, "Our lives?" In my head, I do the math. If we look at the going rate for government slaves on the market, our 4 bodies easily clear the debt. He looks at me, completely fascinated by my absolute lack of survival instinct. He smiles, pointing out that validating and liquidating that kind of human collateral is a massive administrative headache. I tell him that is why this is a golden opportunity for him to make a real business deal with me. He scoffingly asks why the mighty Fire Dragon Merchant Group would ever need a connection with a tiny blacksmith shop. I slide our product catalog forward, offering to supply him with all our iron goods at a massive 30% discount. He gasps, his eyes bulging as he looks at the plow price. 28 silvers for a high-quality plow is mathematically impossible. I just smile, telling him I can draft the supply contract right now. He stares at the paper, sweating profusely as he tries to find the catch in my insane margins. I casually mention that if he isn't interested in making a fortune, I can always take this proposal to his bitter rivals. His eye twitches, his forehead veins popping as his competitive pride is pushed to the limit. Testing the ego of a wealthy young merchant master is always a bit of a gamble, but the payoff is worth it. He snaps, calling for his towering bodyguard, General Ha. He orders him to bring out a full 1,000 silvers, completely bypassing my original 300 request. He gives me a terrifying dark grin, reminding me that since I valued our lives, he will now have absolute ownership over me if I fail. He points his finger at my chest, declaring that he will personally buy me as his slave if I can't pay him back on time. I just give him a confident, devious smirk, telling him that is never going to happen. The sun shines brightly over Bongtai as we head back. Father is practically dazed, asking what our next move is now that we've gambled our lives. I ask him what is the most abundant resource here. He looks at me blankly, completely clueless. It is cheap labor, of course. I tell him I've already posted a massive hiring sign at the market entrance. We arrive back at our gate and I brace myself to see if anyone actually showed up. We open the doors and are greeted by a literal wall of eager applicants waiting for us. Father's eyes go wide with pure shock, his jaw hanging open as he looks at the massive crowd. Word travels fast when people are desperate for a steady wage in a failing economy. I set up a strict vetting process. First rule of the workshop is no slow-witted slackers who will slow down the line. I conduct the interviews myself, telling them that we are looking for actual dedication and basic hand-eye coordination. Majoring in business administration and working 3 separate soul-crushing retail jobs in my past life is finally paying off. By afternoon, the final roster is set, and the sun shines over our brand new workforce. I gather the 20 selected men in the yard, officially welcoming them to the Joe Clan workshop. I pull out our written employment contracts, starting with the charcoal burners. They stare at the papers, looking completely baffled by the weird clauses and structured layout. I explain that their base salary is 8 iron coins a day, with a revolutionary bonus of 2 coins for every hour of overtime. They gasp in disbelief, murmuring to each other about how they've never even heard of overtime pay before. I drop the next bomb, a mandatory mandatory weekly rest day with a paid holiday wage of 7 iron coins. Their eyes go wide. Paid rest? Is this a blacksmith workshop or a high-end retirement home? I reassure them that a rested worker is a productive worker. Burnout is bad for my margins. They look at each other, their faces lit up with pure joy as they realize they get paid to sleep. And then there is the performance bonus. Exceed 30 baskets of charcoal and they get a 50% raise. They look like they're about to pass out. 12 iron coins a day is basically a lord's ransom to these guys. I keep going, introducing paid monthly leaves that roll over and double their daily wage if unused. I outline their annual leave package, painting a glorious picture of modern capitalist benefits that makes me look like an absolute saint. The entire yard erupts into tears of joy. Some of them are literally crying into their hands. Of course, the contracts for the stokers, forgers, and molders are identical. Modern capitalism truly is a beautiful thing. But then I lock eyes with them, warning them that any leak of our manufacturing secrets means instant termination. They raise their fists in absolute fanatical loyalty, screaming that they would rather die than betray us. I give them a warm smile, telling them their paid training starts first thing tomorrow morning. They cheer at the top of their lungs, swearing to work themselves to the bone for the Joe clan. I smile to myself, looking at my happy new employees. The medieval industrial revolution is officially underway. The rhythmic clashing of heavy iron hammers against hot steel echoes through the morning air as we finally kick off our new factory operations. Father is already in full drill sergeant mode, screaming at a trembling worker who dared to hesitate in front of the coal fire. He literally yells at him to feel the heat with his entire body. Talk about extreme on-the-job training. Meanwhile, he turns to a trainee, berating him for hammering unevenly. If you think your boss is tough, try working for a manual blacksmith. But his face completely lights up when Ochil, our new molding star, suggests omitting the cast iron handle from the mold to save materials. Ochil scratches his head sheepishly under Father's rare, glowing praise. I guess positive reinforcement actually works. The other workers look at me with absolute awe and respect as I walk by. Honestly, having status in this world is starting to feel pretty good. But my smugness fades when I find Father wiping his brow, looking incredibly stressed. I quietly ask if he can spare a minute. I tell him the training phase is over and we need to slowly transition to actual mass production. He immediately scoffs, crossing his arms and claiming these raw trainees can't produce anything near our high-quality standards. I reassure him that 70% of our usual quality is more than enough for a budget line. He nearly pops a vein, shouting that these guys can't even hit 50% quality, let alone 70. I pointed out that we are on our 20th day and asked if he planned to burn through our entire 1,000 silvers just on workers' salaries. I lay it out for him after paying the loan sharks and buying raw ingots. Our funds will only last for 10 days. If we don't start selling, we'll go completely broke. He holds up 3 fingers, pleading for just 3 more days to whip these guys into shape so they can at least imitate a proper craftsman. I give him a dry look, pointing out that he said the exact same thing last week. He swears this will be the absolute last delay, so I reluctantly give him the green light. And just like that, 3 days of grueling, sweat-drenched training fly by. The furnaces burn brighter than ever as the workers push themselves to their absolute limits. The stokers pump the bellows with a steady, relentless rhythm. The molders pour glowing molten iron into the clay plow molds with mechanical precision. The forgers strike the hot steel in perfect, synchronized harmony. I watch them from the doorway, completely speechless. They are operating like a well-oiled machine. Father stands beside me, his jaw dropping in absolute shock at how efficient they've become. He whispers about how he spent his entire life doing all these grueling tasks alone, taking 4 whole days just to forge a single plow. Suddenly, 2 molders lift a gleaming, freshly cooled iron plowshare, shouting that the very first batch is officially complete. I inspect the iron, tapping it with a small hammer. The clank is clean and the structure is surprisingly solid. It looks absolutely perfect. I turn to Father, but he just stands there shivering, staring at the plow like he's seen a ghost. He suddenly bursts into giant, stream-like tears of pure joy, screaming at the sky to give him back the 40 years of backbreaking labor he wasted. He grabs my shoulders, shaking me and yelling that I should have told him about this system decades ago. I laugh, trying to calm him down by pointing out that it is never too late to start our industrial revolution. But he is too busy weeping, dramatically mourning his lost youth. He clutches his back, groaning about how many years he spent breaking his spine over the anvil before sniffing and noticing the yard is suddenly quiet. He looks around, casually mentioning that the molders are currently on their scheduled rest break. My business instincts flare up. I suggested we need to buy more anvils, since our team of forgers has doubled. Half a year has flown by since that fateful day, and our little operation has completely exploded in size. Our workshop has grown into a massive industrial complex with hammers constantly clashing day and night. The rhythmic clashing of steel never stops, echoing across the hills of Bongtai. We are pumping out hundreds of high-quality, budget-friendly iron tools every single month. The golden rays of the sunset filter through our newly expanded workshop complex, which is now the undisputed heart of the regional tool trade. My new wealth comes with some great perks. I slide my feet into a pair of custom silk-lined shoes, feeling incredibly comfortable. Honestly, these things are so soft, they're basically the medieval equivalent of a pair of Air Max sneakers. My pleasant morning is interrupted by a soft sliding sound as the door to my office opens. I look up, smiling warmly, as our newly hired general manager steps into the room. Lee Yo-song bows politely, presenting the daily performance ledgers for my approval. I review the numbers, noting that our plow division performed exceptionally well today, though our smaller farming equipment division is still lagging behind. I tell him to keep a close eye on the trainees' productivity. Managing a medieval industrial empire requires constant optimization of our assembly line. I've structured the entire factory into 3 highly specialized departments: the Daejeon building for heavy plows and columns, the Sosan building for minor farm equipment, and our high-tech Gizan building for padlocks and safes. I ask Yosong if there are any other updates, and he informs me that a very important guest has just arrived. I rush to meet him. He smiles, taking a slow sip of tea. It turns out he is actually Jongjae's older brother, the high-ranking executive of the Fire Dragon Merchant Group. He laughs warmly, calling me brother as he stands up to greet me. I grin, rubbing my temple and teasing him about the massive hangover we both got from our heavy drinking session 3 days ago. He chuckled, admitting his head is still spinning too, and explains he wanted to drop by before heading back to headquarters. I laugh, mocking him for acting like he could handle his liquor. He blushes, muttering about how the Maetai didn't sit well with him, but promising to win our next drinking duel. I then smile, asking if he got the silver he promised. He shifts uncomfortably, letting out a nervous cough. He asks me why I keep calling him Jongjae when that is his younger brother's name. I just smile deviously. You guys look identical, so close enough. I put the coin in my purse, while he looks at me in complete confusion. We both sit back, the atmosphere growing slightly more serious as the conversation turns to business. He leans forward, asking if we've figured out a way to handle our workshop's growing security issues with the local sponsors. I look down at my cup, admitting that I still need to think about my options for a bit longer. He warns me that time is running out. We can't use the Fire Dragon Merchant Group's name as a shield forever. He points out that everyone in the province already knows that the flood of cheap iron tools in the market belongs to our workshop. He reminds me that he has been distributing our plows across the entire region of Anhui for half a year. Hundreds of carts leave our gates every month. I listen quietly, my mind calculating our exposure as he speaks. He points out that our massive gate alone is a dead giveaway of our immense success and asks what we'll do when corrupt officials raid us. He warns me that if the workshop falls, his merchant group will also be in a very tight spot for supplying us with iron. I just smile back, casually telling him that nothing bad has happened yet. He slams his hand on the table, calling me naive and explaining that those corrupt regional officials are like wild dogs waiting to tear our profitable workshop to shreds. I chuckle, tapping my chest and slowly reaching into my robes to pull out a small red ledger. He recoils in disgust, groaning about how I'm bringing out my terrifying math book again. I flip through the pages, casually listing the various rival merchant groups who have been mysteriously gifting me luxury shoes and offering cheap steel. I smile, pointing out that these rival groups are eager to shield us from external pressure in exchange for our business. He throws my book, completely bewildered by my absolute lack of fear. He tapped the table with a sharp click, reminding me that business isn't just about cold, hard profits. It is about building deep emotional connections. He points his finger at me, warning me that those corrupt officials will swarm our workshop soon because their lives depend on seizing our wealth. I flash him a devious, confident grin, telling him I've already designed the ultimate countermeasure. He groans, asking if I'm about to pull another crazy stunt. I just chuckle, telling him to sit back and watch. I tell him we need a sponsor so powerful that even the imperial officials won't dare to touch us. We need to secure a connection with Master Bang. I lean in, asking him if he knows exactly how much net revenue Joe Clan's workshop generated this month. He shrugs, guessing a high number, like 600 silvers. I casually declare that it was actually 60 gold pieces, and he literally falls backward out of his chair with a spectacular crash. I smile, explaining that I've already used a chunk of those profits to bribe every single official in the district. I am not afraid of local bureaucrats. My eyes narrow as my gaze turns cold and serious. The ones I am actually worried about are the powerful martial forces who want to steal our factory. There are groups in the Jianghu who operate completely outside the imperial law. like the ruthless Iron Blood group who will kill anyone to protect their interests. The young master swallows hard, his face pale as he whispers, "Jianghu." I tap my cup of tea with a quiet click. It is time to secure a backer who can crush any martial threat. I dip my finger into the tea, slowly drawing a line on the wooden table. I describe the elite South Palace swordsman, a legendary lineage of imperial generals whose mere name strikes absolute terror into the hearts of any bandit or corrupt official. He gapes in absolute sweating horror, realizing my true target. I smile triumphantly, pointing my finger forward as I declare that I will have the King of Anhui himself as my personal sponsor. The legendary Namgung clan, the absolute best swordsmen in the world. They will be our ultimate shield. Young Master Li just stares at me, sweat dripping down his dazed face, whispering if I honestly believe such a crazy gamble is even possible. I told him a story. A few days before our fateful meeting, I was walking down the busy street when a massive commotion caught my attention, drawing a huge crowd. I tapped a village neighbor on the shoulder to ask what was going on, and he whispered that a fight had broken out over the local brothel. I squeezed through the crowd and saw Sajami, a notorious outlaw, waving his sword around and shouting about taking over the place. I stood there, sweat dripping and completely bewildered, wondering if people in this town actually settle their real estate disputes with broadswords. Before anyone could stop him, another rowdy fighter charged forward, and the two of them went head to head. With a sharp clang, their weapons clashed. They started leaping and swinging. Every strike was incredibly messy. I stared in absolute amazement, my jaw practically hitting the floor. But then I overheard two veteran merchants nearby quietly gossiping, completely unimpressed by the display. They dryly noted that despite the flashy moves and high leaps, neither of these hot-headed idiots was a true warrior. I blinked in disbelief. Seriously? If this level of gravity-defying violence isn't considered a real warrior around here, then what is? The two fighters launched themselves back into the air. They aimed for each other's throats. With a heavy thud, one deflected the other's strike. The blade sheared cleanly through a wooden beam, proving they were definitely playing for keeps. But just as they were about to tear each other to pieces, a cold, sharp voice sliced through the noise, ordering them to freeze. A shimmering blue blade swept in with lightning speed, effortlessly deflecting both of their weapons in a single motion. The two outlaws froze instantly, their aggressive smiles completely vanishing as their eyes went wide with pure terror. They staggered backward, looking at the intruder like they had just seen a ghost. Out of the dust stepped a man in elegant, dark, dragon-embroidered robes. He glared down at them, calling them worm-like imbeciles and telling them to get lost before he lost his patience. The fierce fighters who were ready to murder each other a second ago immediately bowed, stammering apologies as they trembled. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as the dragon-robe warrior walked away, his presence alone clearing the street in seconds. I watched his retreating back with my heart pounding, realizing that is exactly what a true master looks like. That moment sealed it. I am going all in on partnering with the great Namgung clan. After that street fight wake-up call, I knew our workshop needed a backer of that caliber to survive. Back to present, I smiled, thanking him for taking a gamble on me back when the only thing I could offer as collateral was my family's lives. He laughed heartily, admitting that if he knew how much money our mass-produced plows would make, he would have lent me 10 times more. I teased him about his sudden generosity, and he playfully threatened to buy me as a slave anyway if our margins ever slipped. He stood up to leave, reminding me to write to him immediately if any corrupt officials or rival groups started giving us trouble. Shortly after he left, our workshop helper respectfully bowed, informing me that the workshop's pioneer wanted to see me. I headed to the inner quarters, wondering why my father was summoning me so formally. He had specifically requested that I dress in my finest noble robes, which only made me more curious about what was going on. With a soft, sliding sound, the door opened and my father stepped into the quiet room. I sat up straight, greeting him politely. Instead of his usual blacksmith apron, he was cleaned up and wearing dignified robes, carrying a small purple chest. He solemnly told me to stay right where I was as he sat down opposite me. My heart skipped a beat. Why was he being so incredibly serious all of a sudden? He placed the chest between us, explaining that it held a supernatural heirloom passed down through the generations of our clan. He looked at me with deep pride, declaring that today he was handing this family treasure over to me. He said that regardless of what anyone else thought, I was the one who saved our clan from ruin and deserved to lead. I stammered, telling him that our success was only possible because of his incredible craftsmanship, but he gently cut me off, placing his hand on the lid with a firm, decisive click. He solemnly declared that as the patriarch of the 22nd generation, he was naming me the new chief of the Zhou clan. I froze in shock as the lid popped open. Suddenly, a wave of intense deja vu hit me. In my modern past life, my father had given me a ruby necklace in the exact same way. My hand trembled as I reached into the box, my mind racing through my memories. As my fingers brushed the stone, a brilliant, warm red light burst from the chest, illuminating the entire room. Father smiled, telling me that this Yuichion crimson jade was now mine to guard and keep with me at all times. So this glowing red bead is the legendary treasure of our family. But if my modern father gave me the exact same heirloom, does that mean I actually transmigrated into the body of my own ancient ancestor? Before I could process that paradox, a chorus of ancient, echoey voices suddenly started whispering inside my head. I jumped back, my eyes bulging in pure terror as I screamed, "What the heck?" I frantically waved my hands at father, yelling that the crimson jade was literally talking to me, but he just looked confused. Having your dad think you have lost your mind to a glowing rock is not a good look. The spirits inside the jade seemed just as shocked, realizing that I could actually hear them communicating. Father calmly explained that he had once experienced a dream after staring at the jade, advising me to keep my heart prepared. He slid the door shut, leaving me alone in the quiet room with the glowing chest. Suddenly, a massive, towering spirit engulfed in purple flames materialized, commanding me to reveal my name. I sat on the floor, sweat dripping, and nervously introduced myself as Zhou Huai, trying to stay polite. The giant spirit, who introduced himself as our ancestor Sama, noted that my energy matched theirs, but he couldn't see my string. I blinked, completely lost. What on earth did he mean by a string? He explained that any descendant chosen by the jade is bound to it by a spiritual thread, which claims their soul upon death. He added that in exchange, the jade bestows extraordinary talents and abilities upon its keeper. Sama insisted that I must have received some legendary power, otherwise my presence there made no sense. I swallowed hard, asking what kind of abilities he was actually talking about. He listed the legendary paths, soaring through skies as a sword prodigy, mapping the stars as a scholar, or ruling as an emperor. I gave him a deadpan look, pointing out that if I had any cheat codes, I wouldn't have spent months sweating over plow margins. The spirit flared up in surprise and shook with this belief. Sama pointed a massive flaming purple finger at me, roaring that I must be lying about not receiving a blessing. I shivered, sweating buckets under his terrifying gaze, but then I remembered, there was indeed one strange thing. I died in a modern car accident and woke up in this body. I hesitated, wondering if it was a good idea to tell a bunch of ancient ghosts that I'm actually a transmigrated delivery guy. I bowed my head, cautiously confessing that I had experienced a strange, terrifying event that was my lifelong secret. Sama's tone softened slightly, reassuring me that they were my ancestors and meant me no harm. He reminded me that they were only spirits with no power to interfere in the physical world anyway. I slowly looked up, gulping as I asked if they were truly my ancestors. He nodded, explaining that the jade seal only responds to immediate blood relatives, so they could never harm their own chief. I took a deep breath, a devious grin slowly spreading across my face as I told him that I had actually transmigrated from the modern era. The spirits went completely quiet before erupting into pure chaotic shock while Sama began laughing hysterically. He roared with laughter, realizing the heavens had bound him to a modern merchant, making him an immoral profiteer forever. The echoing laughter finally faded, leaving the jade humming quietly on the floor. I carefully reached out, picking up the Yuichion crimson jade once more. I let out a heavy sigh, holding the purple box and wondering how my simple business plan got tangled up with ancient spirits. But before I could even stand up, a frantic banging suddenly erupted from my sliding door. With a loud crash, the door was slammed open, practically flying off its hinges. My older brother, Jihoon, burst into the room with a comically hyper-excited, blushing face. He was panting and shouting at the top of his lungs, screaming that we had been chosen to go to the legendary Namgoon clan. I stared at him with a completely flat, deadpan expression, and quietly told him absolutely not, because my business plan doesn't include getting drafted as an anime protagonist sidekick. My brother Jihoon is kneeling in my room, practically begging me to let him tag along to Huffei. I try to explain that this isn't some fun weekend getaway, but he immediately cuts me off, swearing up and down that he won't make a single peep and will stay by my side throughout the entire mission. I can already feel a massive headache coming on just from looking at his tragic puppy dog eyes. In a desperate attempt to bribe him into staying, I promise to have father forge him a real, high-quality steel sword. It completely backfires. Suddenly, he's sobbing and clutching his hands, crying that even 10 swords won't sway him. Seriously, the drama is reaching anime final level boss fight. He looks so pitifully miserable, tears streaming down his face with a comically dramatic whine. Before I can kick him out, father walks in and drops a bomb, claiming Jihoon promised to be completely quiet and act like a personal assistant. I stare at father in absolute disbelief. Why is he taking his side all of a sudden? Father puts a hand on my shoulder, giving me a solemn lecture about how we are brothers and I shouldn't try to shoulder all the responsibilities alone. I look back at Ju-hoon. This guy can barely carry out his basic duties as a human being, let alone survive in the cutthroat marine, but father actually bows, pleading with me to yield just this once. Great, now I'm the heartless one in the family. I rub my temples, letting out a defeated sigh, and ask Ju-hoon if he's absolutely sure he won't let out a single peep. He leaps up, pumping his fist and shouting that honesty is a warrior's creed and that he is the literal definition of silence. Yes, the irony is completely lost on him. I wave my hand to dismiss him, telling him we depart in a few days and to get everything ready. He throws his hands up in joy, screaming about having everything done, leaving me to question my life choices. A few days fly by in a blur of clanging hammers as we pack up the workshop, but just as we're wrapping things up, one of our helpers sprints into the yard, sweating and panting like he's running for his life. He gasps out that a massive, angry crowd has gathered outside the gate and they're all heavily armed. I narrow my eyes, my business brain instantly switching to high alert. Armed? With a thunderous crash, the gates are busted open as a mob of local blacksmiths storms in with pitchforks and shovels, screaming about taking our tools. I adjust my robes and take a deep breath. Phew, it's finally happening. The classic rival guild confrontation. I step out into the courtyard, introducing myself calmly as the boss of the Joe Clan workshop. The leader of the mob, a furious artisan with thick blocky brows, steps forward and starts screaming, calling me an immoral scammer and a shameless bastard. I spread my hands in mock innocence, casually asking what exactly I did to offend everyone so deeply. He glares at me, veins popping on his forehead as he yells about there being sacred moral codes to business. I let out a soft chuckle, mockingly repeating moral codes like it's the funniest joke I've heard all year. Before he can swing his tool at me, I step forward, commanding the crowd's attention to ask them a single question. If we lowered our prices and still made a massive profit, would any of their moral workshops volunteer to keep their high prices and lose their livelihoods? The entire mob goes dead silent, the angry shouts instantly dying down as they look at each other in sweating awkwardness. Of course they wouldn't. Clinging to outdated prices while your competitor innovates is just commercial suicide. I flash them a confident grin and wave my hand, inviting them to follow me inside to see how a real factory operates. They murmur among themselves, their aggressive posture completely melting into pure curiosity as they follow. I lead them through the heavy wooden doors and into our main manufacturing hall, and the moment they step inside, their jaws collectively hit the floor, their eyes bulging in absolute disbelief. Before them is a massive roaring assembly line, with dozens of specialized stations working in perfect, synchronized clanging harmony. Rows of high-quality iron plowshares are stacked high, looking like a literal mountain of steel wealth. I turn to them, my eyes flaring with a devious crimson glow as I ask them flatly if they still think they can compete with me. The elders hang their heads, completely crushed by the realization that their traditional, slow methods are utterly obsolete. I smirk inwardly, letting the thick, heavy silence do the talking for a moment. I raise my voice, asking how long they plan to live under constant pressure, confined to second-place obscurity while other regions dominate. A few of the younger artisans start nodding, my words hitting them right where it hurts. I pace around them, passionately pointing out how the imperial family has only ever mistreated our region, taking our young men to turn them into cannon fodder. I point my finger high, demanding to know who actually forged the legendary divine weapons of the past. A bit of regional pride always works wonders. We are the descendants of legendary master craftsmen. If we are talking about pure, raw talent, our people are second to none. They erupt into shouts of agreement, their anger completely redirected toward the unfair regional hierarchy. Classic political pivot works every time. I dramatically fold my hands and bow, softly asking them to help me achieve our collective dream. The leader of the group blinks, completely dazed, and asks what exactly I mean by achieving a dream. I explain that if we want to dominate, we must join forces and flood the market with our tools. Quantity has a quality of its own. I offer to pay them a premium to teach our trainees, saving them from backbreaking physical labor while preserving their legacy. I wave my hand toward the entrance, calling father to step forward. I drop the final financial hammer, a guaranteed monthly salary of 10 silvers for our new pioneers, plus massive bonuses and a buyout of their tools. They gasp in shock. 10 silvers a month is a fortune. I look at them and ask if they are ready to join the Joe Clan Empire. Without waiting for an answer, I clap my hands and order our helpers to bring out the item we prepared. Two workers carry in a massive, heavy plaque covered in a gold-embroidered cloth. With a dramatic sweep, I pull the cover off, unveiling my grand resolution directly to them. Beneath the cloth is a magnificent, freshly carved sign, Manhwa Workshop. I tell them that together, this name will be reborn anew. The angry pitchfork leader completely breaks, raising a heavy blacksmith hammer and roaring that he's in, pledging to make our workshop #1 under the heavens. The crowd erupts into cheers. I turn to Father, asking him to take our new partners and give them a detailed operational briefing. They all laugh and chatter, heading off to celebrate while I watch them go with a smug smile. I lean back, my eyes flaring red as I chuckle to myself. This is what we call a flawless hostile takeover. Welcome to corporate Marine, boys. Later that evening, I walk through the quiet courtyard alongside Manager Lee, discussing our next logistical steps. He bows respectfully, waiting for my instructions. I tell him to station half of our newly hired men at the departure area to secure our caravan. He smiles, asking if I'm finally planning on developing that specialized carriage design I've been sketching. I just grin. I remind him that we depart for Hefei tomorrow at sunrise, and he reassures me that everything has already been prepared. I watch him bow and walk away, thinking to myself that hiring a professional administrator was the best business choice I've made yet. Before he leaves, he pauses, politely asking how long the trip to Hefei will actually take. I tell him I can't pinpoint an exact date. This is a voyage of conquest, and I have no intention of returning until our goal is achieved. He nods with a knowing smile, mentioning that they will handle any urgent workshop decisions in my absence. I hand him a leather-bound manual, explaining it contains solutions to any potential business issues that might crop up while I'm gone. The next morning, the sun rises over the majestic peaks, painting the sky in beautiful golden hues as we set out. The horses' hooves clatter rhythmically against the dirt road as we make our way through the dense green forest. I struggle a bit with the reins, muttering about how I've only just gotten used to riding a horse. Seriously, my old delivery scooter was infinitely easier to steer than this thing. Meanwhile, Juhoon is riding beside me with absolute ease, looking comically relaxed as he flips through a book. I peer over, asking if that's the legendary Martial Windstorm journal he's been obsessing over. He nods eagerly, explaining that a scholar named Jagal Yuwoon told him this chronicle records the history of the Mareem's top masters in chronological order. He suddenly stops and glares at me, asking if I was just bad-mouthing him in my head. Wow, his brotherly intuition is surprisingly sharp. He softens, looking down as he admits that even though he's my older brother, he hasn't really shown a protective side to himself. He sighs, confessing he still can't believe I'm his little brother, since my intelligence and business schemes are completely out of this world. He points out that when I was persuading those angry workshop elders, I looked like a terrifying, silver-tongued monster from another dimension. He looks at me with an incredibly serious, intense gaze, adding that just because I'm a genius doesn't mean his own path is any less serious. I blink, completely caught off guard by a sudden transition to deep, dramatic character development. He clenches his fist tightly against the reins, his knuckles turning white as he speaks. I look at him closely, realizing that behind his goofy behavior, he has been training his swordplay non-stop day and night. He stares ahead, his usual goofy face completely replaced by the focused, intense expression of a true martial artist. He quietly mutters that there are a lot of things you are forced to forget when you decide to live by the sword. He asks if I still remember the Gawung Che incident from years ago. I think back through my inherited memories, recalling how a group of ruthless bandits stole the food charity during a terrible harvest. He clenches his chest, passionately declaring that he wants to protect Father and me, and will never let anyone get hurt again. I stare at him in pure, speechless shock, completely blown away by his genuine brotherly sincerity. A warm, gentle smile spreads across my face as I look at him, feeling incredibly lucky to have him as a brother. I bump his shoulder playfully, telling him I'm absolutely sure he'll do great and become a legendary master. He immediately blushes and swats my hand away, comically screaming at me to get my hands off him, and we both burst into hearty laughter. Suddenly, a warm crimson light pulses from my chest, humming with ancient spiritual energy. Inside my mind, Sama laughs manically, dryly remarking that with a sly tongue like mine, I could probably sell water from the Yangtze River. Hey, a prophet's a prophet, ancestor. They're literally debating whether I'm better than some dead relative named An. Awesome. Reincarnated just to be compared to family ghosts. You'd think a legendary family heirloom would come with a user manual, not a bunch of cranky, opinionated roommates. Suddenly, the loudest ghost in the jewel flares up, screaming that I'm an imbecile who doesn't appreciate ancient relics. Wait, a sudden cold sweat drips down my neck. Can these guys actually hear what I'm thinking? Oh, fantastic. They confirm it instantly. My mind is apparently a public chat room for the dead. They start lecturing me about unifying our psyches and spiritual threads, as if that makes having zero privacy okay. I narrow my eyes, trying to count the different echoey voices floating around in my skull. There are 8 of them, right? They actually laugh, seemingly impressed that I can count. Wow, the bar for being considered clever in ancient times is incredibly low. I tell them it's just basic pattern recognition, but they insist my brain is some kind of hyper-evolved supercomputer. Well, I guess studying for civil service exams for 7 years does give you some weird, useless cognitive perks. They whisper among themselves, wondering if my bizarre modern business logic is a side effect of being reincarnated. They're actually fascinated by my factory assembly line, agreeing that dividing labor like Henry Ford is a stroke of absolute genius. Suddenly, a massive, haughty spirit with a glorious maroon beard emerges, scoffing that a kid who bribed people with silvers is unfit to be king. Wait, Mindaeok, as in the legendary Cao Cao from the Three Kingdoms? My ancestor is a literal anime tier warlord? He proudly explains his lineage, boasting about how his father centered the entire clan around him after being adopted by an eunuch. Great. My direct ancestor is a legendary, ruthless conqueror. No pressure at all. He keeps complaining about my modern business strategies, grumbling that a true sovereign doesn't pay salaries, he conquers. I snap back, asking if he expects me to run a factory with slaves or brainwash my employees with cheap booze on the first day. The spirits explode in anger, screaming at me for showing disrespect to my elders, while I just sigh and keep writing. Beside me, Jihoon lets out a comically loud gasp, completely engrossed in his book and oblivious to my mental civil war. I turn to him, raising an eyebrow, and ask what's got him so incredibly hyped. He turns to me with sparkling eyes, yelling that he's reading about a master who did something completely impossible. Apparently, this legendary warrior wiped out an entire bishop tier of outlaws with just 6 swift strikes. He sliced off the leader's head so fast the guy probably didn't even realize he was dead. He explains that these outlaws belong to the fearsome Dark Demon Palace, gesturing wildly. I nod, but secretly think it sounds like typical internet forum hype. Annihilating an entire top-tier guild in a second? Sounds like a major exaggeration. But hey, in a world where ghosts live in my necklace, I guess I shouldn't rule anything out. Jihoon pouts, complaining that this sword god master only gets 3 measly pages in the journal compared to Sima Qian. Just then, the crimson jade pulses again, the deep voice of Cao Cao echoing in my mind, asking a very serious question. He asks why the descendants of an imperial lineage like us are currently living as struggling, middle-class blacksmiths. I shrug, thinking to myself that even the wealthiest families go broke after 3 generations. Why should an empire be any different? Cao Cao gets defensive, boasting that he left behind a massive hidden vault containing a staggering 100,000 gold blocks. My eyes nearly pop out of my head. 100,000 blocks? That is roughly 375 tons of gold. Okay, my interest is officially piqued. I immediately switch into full-blown CEO mode, asking him if he'd like to negotiate a mutually beneficial contract. He smiles deviously, telling me that with their ancestral help, I can easily challenge the forces currently dominating the Merim. I narrow my eyes, asking him who exactly we'd be going up against. The purple flames flare up, revealing a terrifying, shadowy overlord whose sole goal is to annihilate our entire clan. Suddenly, the pieces click together. That intense, burning hostility I felt whenever I heard the word Sama, it was their spiritual residue. I rub my head. This is getting way too deep. I'm just a guy trying to run a profitable blacksmith shop, not lead a holy war. But Cao Cao ignores my hesitation, turning his gaze toward the shadows and calling out to our white-haired ancestor. He asks him if he can bestow his peerless martial arts abilities upon me, and the swordsman bows in silent agreement. I blink, completely lost as a massive wave of spiritual energy starts swirling around us. The purple flames wrap around my horse, humming with a sharp, crackling hiss. Out steps Zhou Qian, the sword god himself, looking like a straight-up legendary character card from an SSR gacha game. I stare at him, my heart pounding in my chest. This is getting insanely real. Cao Cao calls upon another ancestor spirit to begin the martial energy transfer. They discuss exploiting my secret meridians to funnel centuries of refined spiritual energy directly into my body. I swallow hard, feeling a strange, bubbling warmth rising in my chest. Zhou Qian notes that he's peeked into my modern memories, fascinated by our giant metal birds, yachts, and towering glowing cities. I sweat buckets. Seriously? Looking through my private memories without permission? Talk about a total stalker. Cao Cao extends his hand, asking if I'm finally ready to combine my modern wits with their ancient power to conquer the Merim. With a sharp snap, I pull my horse's reins and make up my mind. In business, you never walk away from a winning partnership. I flash a devious, confident grin. It's a deal. Welcome to corporate consolidation, ancestors. With the contract sealed, the heavy spiritual pressure vanishes, leaving the forest quiet once more. A few days later, the sun rises over Hefei, illuminating the massive, sprawling metropolis like a giant golden beast. We officially enter the city, and the sheer scale and noise of the streets make Bongtai look like a tiny village. I look around at the bustling markets, taking in the sights. Seeing the massive crowds of people chattering and trading gives me a sudden flash of modern-day subways and crowded streets. Street vendors and actors are shouting everywhere, trying to sell their cheap snacks and goods. We navigate the packed market road, trying not to get separated in the crowd. Ji-hoon is practically vibrating with excitement, his eyes darting around like a kid in a candy store. Suddenly, a loud clanging of brass instruments echoes from a nearby stage, drawing a massive crowd. Ji-hoon points at the stage, loudly asking if this is the legendary Peking opera he's heard about. A kind old man with incredibly long, droopy white eyebrows chuckles, asking if it's our first time visiting the big city. Ji-hoon bows politely, laughing and proudly proclaiming that we've traveled all the way from Bongtai. I smile quietly to myself, realizing that despite the size of the city, people here are surprisingly friendly and chatty. I chime in, telling the elder that I'm also from Bongtai, and he smiles warmly at the two country boys. On stage, the flags start waving wildly, signaling the climax of the performance. The actors put on a stylized, theatrical sword fight, playing the roles of a fearsome blood demon and a heroic warrior. Ji-hoon watches with absolute starry-eyed awe, completely mesmerized by the actor playing the heavenly sword warrior. He pumps his fist, screaming the hero's name at the top of his lungs like a fanboy at a rock concert. Seriously, the secondhand embarrassment is real. The actors clash their wooden weapons with a loud, rhythmic clack. But our fun is cut short when three rough-looking local thugs nearby start muttering aggressively. They sneer at the play, loudly complaining that the historical chronicle proves the Heavenly Thunder swordsman was the one who actually won that battle. They glare in our direction, pointing at us and muttering about country bumpkins making too much noise. Suddenly, a warrior in a robe with an elegant dragon crest on the shoulder steps into the scene. The thugs turn pale as they recognize Jagal, a legendary figure from the elite factions, standing right behind them. They immediately start backing away, sweating profusely and whispering apologies as they flee. Even the kind elder's expression turns solemn as the tension in the square spikes. But Ji-hoon completely ignores the danger, puffing out his chest and angrily screaming back at the fleeing thugs. I freeze in pure sweat-dripping panic. Oh, no. Please don't let him pick a fight on our very first day here. He glares at them with comically terrifying, bloodshot eyes, screaming what they are looking at. Yeah, my older brother is definitely going to get us killed. Ji-hoon is holding that old history book and screaming about being the ultimate fan of Jonghu's historical chronicles. Great, my older brother is officially a Merim novel nerd. He starts dramatically reciting the legend of the Heavenly Lightning Swordsman defeating the Southern Jade Blood Demon and bringing back his head. He insists that when the swordsman returned covered in blood-red palm marks, it was proof he was hit by the Great Blood Heaven absorption technique. He is proudly yelling all of this to three high-ranking Namgoon disciples right in the middle of the crowded city square. The leader of the disciples is looking extremely pissed off, completely silent as veins start popping on his forehead. Ji-hoon keeps digging his own grave, loudly declaring that even though he respects Jagal Yuwoon, nobody is perfect. I stare at my brother, sweat dripping down my face as my mind goes completely numb. This guy has absolutely zero survival instinct. The angry disciple steps forward, demanding to know if Ji-hoon is implying that the great swordsman and the entire Namgoon family are liars. Ji-hoon suddenly flinches, his face turning bright red as he realizes the sheer terrifying weight of what he just said. The disciple's eyes flare with raw, murderous intent. He barks at Ji-hoon, asking how on earth Jagal Yuwoon could possibly know what happened during the battle. I can feel the entire marketplace going dead silent as the tension spikes. In the background, an old merchant with a long white beard starts laughing heartily at the drama, completely making things worse. The disciple's eye narrows, his hand slowly drifting toward the hilt of his sword. He points at Ji-hoon, telling him that even if he's a civilian, a man must be responsible for his own words. I quickly jump in, grabbing Ji-hoon from behind, sweat dripping as I try to salvage our lives. I comically haul him away, his feet scrambling against the dirt. I drag him as fast as my legs can carry me. I gag his mouth with my hand, screaming a comically manic apology. "Yeah, I'm crazy. Let's go and play now," while he tries to mumble, "Are you crazy?" By sunset, Hefei's skyline is painted in beautiful shades of orange and purple. The city lanterns light up, and we are safely hidden away inside a tea house. I sit at the table with my head in my hands, letting out a heavy sigh, asking Ju-hoon why he couldn't keep his promise to not cause trouble. I yell at him, pointing out that his lack of survival instinct is the main reason I have to treat my life like a high-stakes survival game. Ji-hoon blushes and looks down at his lap, looking comically ashamed of himself. I slam my teacup down with a loud tack, screaming that I'm the one who must have gone crazy, while Junjae warns me that if I keep getting serious, I might end up trying to slap the Marine Alliance leader. I chug the entire cup of tea, trying to wash down the sheer stress of the day. Junjae leans back, asking what exactly happened. I just sigh, telling him to forget it and to sit down so we can talk business. I lean in, looking dead serious as I ask him to tell me everything he knows about the Namgun family. Junjae strokes his chin, looking thoughtful as he mentions the family name. I tell him I already know all the public history. What I need is the high-level dirt, their personalities, preferences, personal ambitions, internal conflicts, and who is taking bribes in the inner court. Junjae looks at me like I've lost my mind, telling me that kind of classified intelligence is incredibly hard to find. I ask if there's any way around it, and he admits there is one possible path. He whispers about two legendary secret intelligence groups that are even better than the Beggar Sect, the Night Butterfly and the Lunar Forest. Sounds like a couple of high-end medieval cyber espionage guilds, honestly. He explains they are the ultimate shadow organizations of the Jianghu, but there's a catch. They are so secretive that no one even knows if they truly exist. I sigh inwardly, thinking about how those legendary groups probably charge astronomical fees anyway. Junjae looks serious, warning me about the gatehouse at the Namgung family. He explains that hundreds of people request a meeting every single day, and about 80% of them get rejected without ever seeing the inner court master, Namgung Beck. I sweat buckets, my jaw dropping in shock. Hundreds of people in a single day? Talk about a massive customer service bottleneck. He explains their gatekeeping system. They distribute color-coded status tokens. Government officials and high-ranking military commanders get prestigious golden tokens. I listen intently, asking what the other colors are. He tells me that bronze tokens go to those delivering weapons, clothes, and food supplies, or distant collateral relatives. I ask if there are any other levels, hoping we can bypass the line. He explains that red and blue tokens are given to ordinary merchants and requesting visitors. I chew my lip, realizing that golden, silver, bronze, red, and blue tokens are used to filter visitors. I grumble, resting my chin on my hands, muttering about how they are so incredibly hard to meet. I bow politely, thanking him for the valuable advice, while he apologizes for not being more help and asks what I plan to do. I sit up straight, my eyes narrowing with determination. I tell him I'll just have to go for it and visit their estate tomorrow. He bows back, wishing me the best of luck on my crazy gamble. The next morning, the bright sun rises, signaling the start of a very long day. The Namgung family's grand estate stands majestically under the daylight. The white-walled compound is absolutely massive, looking more like an imperial fortress than a family home. Ji-hoon walks out of our in-room, telling me he's heading out for his morning training, and I just groggily wave him off. I lie in bed, sighing at how hard he's working while I'm still trying to wake up. Suddenly, the crimson jade around my neck pulses with bright red light, and Jo-cheon's voice echoes in my head, asking when we're going to the sword tomb. I stare at the glowing rock in disbelief. Seriously? Can't a guy get 5 minutes of sleep without a ghost pestering him? I groggily ask him if I absolutely have to travel all that way. He pops out in his spirit form, looking incredibly stern as he repeats that I can't succeed his sword knowledge without visiting the tomb. I point out that traveling across 2 whole provinces will take at least 4 to 5 months, and I have a business to run here in Anhui. He gets absolutely furious, roaring that I am completely underestimating his legendary sword arts. A map of the provinces flashes in my mind. Gansu and Shaanxi are literally on the other side of the country. That is a massive waste of time and money, especially if we run into bandits or if my horse breaks a leg. But as I stare at the ceiling, I realize I can't just throw away the chance to learn the martial arts of a literal sword god. I reluctantly agree to go as soon as possible, and he dryly asks when that would be. I tell him maybe in a month or two, after I've secured our deal with the Namgung family. He scoffs, telling me that's way too late. He points out that I'm already turning 20, my meridians are completely closed, and my body is stiff. Before I can argue, his purple aura explodes around me, and he yells that he's going to borrow my body to force open my channels. I freeze in pure terror, shouting, "What? You want to borrow my body?" The room starts spinning as his ancient energy begins to flood my senses. The raw spiritual energy slams into me and I scream in panic. Wait, sir, wait a minute. Shh. A blinding white light explodes in my head with a loud crackle of energy. I sit there in a trance as centuries of refined master-level energy flow through my limbs. The heat is intense, circulating through my chest and shoulders. My ancestor stands up, using my legs, stretching and complaining about what a completely messed up stiff body I have. He warns me that he can only maintain control for 7 to 8 minutes, so he has to gather my innate core energy immediately. I scream inside my own mind, completely horrified. "Sir, innate core energy?" Suddenly, the energy surge goes into overdrive, and my expensive silk noble robes are completely shredded into rags with a loud tearing sound. I look down at my hands and arms, my eyes nearly popping out of my head. What the hell? Am I a medieval Hulk? I stare in absolute disbelief at my shredded clothes and my comically jacked, ridiculously shredded six-pack abs. My muscles are literally bursting out of my shirt and my chest looks like it was sculpted from solid granite. I wiggle my fingers, trying to get used to the insane power coursing through my veins. The spiritual storm finally clears, leaving me standing bare-chested and barefoot in a pile of torn rags. Zhou Qian's voice echoes in my head, calmly explaining that he used my core energy to open up all my meridians. I swallow hard, nervously laughing as a sudden realization hits me. Based on what I've read, using core energy like this usually comes with a pretty heavy price. He casually shrugs it off, asking what the big deal is about losing a minor 10 years of my life force. I let out a blood-curdling scream of pure, sweat-dripping horror. What? 10 years of my life? I scramble inside my own head, screaming at my ancestor Jojon for being an absolute maniac. He's literally using my life force like a disposable battery, but he just scoffs from inside the ruby, telling me that mastering his peerless swordplay is worth a minor detail like 10 years of my lifespan. Easy for a ghost to say. Before I can launch into a full-scale mental lawsuit, his purple energy starts receding with a soft sliding sound, leaving me bare-chested and gasping for air as his presence fades back into the Yuichian crimson jade. I open my eyes, a comically shocked, popping above my head as I realize the room has stopped spinning. I look down at my hands and let out a blood-curdling scream. My expensive silk noble robes are completely shredded into tattered rags. I collapse onto my knees with a heavy thud, my chest heaving as the residual core heat circulates through my muscles. Zhou Qian's voice echoes one last time, sounding completely exhausted, telling me he consumed too much soul energy and has to hibernate. The morning sun beams through the wooden ceiling slats, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the quiet room. I lie flat on the floor, groaning as the final waves of body purification wash through my limbs. I slowly sit up, rubbing my temple. No pain, no gain, I guess, but a 10-year price tag is a bit steep for a gym membership. Suddenly, I open my eyes and my vision explodes with supreme clarity. Dullness from years of cramming civil exams? Gone. I can see the individual fibers on the floor. I stagger to the open window, looking out over the Hefei skyline in absolute jaw-dropping amazement. The bustling city streets stretching out for miles look incredibly vivid, like I'm looking through a military-grade telescope. I stare at my chest. A glowing golden core of pure refined internal energy is pulsing right beneath my skin. I wiggle my fingers and with a soft crackling hiss, golden magical sparks start dancing on my fingertips. I swing my hand and a massive gust of wind explodes from my palm, blowing my tattered rags backward. I smile deviously. Okay, I finally get why my brother Ju-hoon is so completely obsessed with becoming a martial arts master. I squeeze my fist, feeling the supreme core power coursing through my veins. I don't know what tier I'm at, but this is definitely going to make business negotiations a lot easier. I throw a clean cloak over my shredded shoulders, my eyes narrowing. It's time to visit the Namgoon family and secure our sponsor. We arrive at the great Namgoon family estate under the bright, glorious morning sun. The compound is absolutely massive, exuding an aura of pure, intimidating martial prestige. The main courtyard is packed with hundreds of chattering visitors, all waiting to get in. Ji-hoon stands beside me, his jaw hitting the floor as he gasps in comically starry-eyed awe at the sheer scale of the place. We step up to the gatehouse, where a stoic guard in blue dragon crest armor commands us to register in the visitor's log. I lean over, confidently writing our names down on the paper. I sign it simply, Anhiri Smithy Cho Haichwai. No need to announce our grand corporate ambitions just yet. The guard peers at the registry, smirks smiling at our modest blacksmith background with quiet arrogance. Ji-hoon blushes, pointing at the page and demanding to be registered as Warrior Cho Hyuk until I comically drag him away by his collar. We are ushered into the massive Damro Court guest parlor, which is overflowing with martial artists drinking tea. Ji-hoon is still comically flexing and whispering about his warrior's pride, while I just ignore him and look around. The entire room is humming with the passive, heavy pressure of high-tier martial artists side-eyeing each other. I overhear two snobbish guests at a nearby table quietly sneering at our plain bong-tie clothes. I take a slow sip of tea, wondering how on earth we are going to bypass this massive, months-long waiting line. Suddenly, a shadow falls over our table, and the loud murmuring of the parlor instantly dies down. I look up, blinking in surprise. Standing right in front of us is the kind old Hefei elder we chatted with at the market yesterday. He's smiling warmly at us. Ji-hoon leaps up and bows politely, laughing in surprise, while I apologize for our abrupt departure yesterday. The old man chuckles, clearly pleased to see us, though my brother still has no idea who we are actually talking to. Ji-hoon casually asks if the guest hall master is around, making me sweat drip in embarrassment. With a dignified clack of his black shoes, the elder steps forward, exuding a sudden wave of quiet authority. He turns to his stunned staff, a knowing smile playing on his face. He calmly commands them to bypass the entire queue and bring us the prestigious golden status tokens. Kwai and Ji-hoon's eyes bulge in absolute comically blank shock. Wait. The market grandpa is a high-ranking Namgoon elder? The snobbish guests at the nearby tables turn pale, staring at us like we just won the medieval lottery. The vice master gestures for us to follow him, completely ignoring the stunned whispers of the crowd. Ji-hoon and I look at each other, sweat dripping down our faces in comically bewildered silence. The moment we enter the corridor, Ji-hoon bursts into comically loud tears of joy, hugging my arm while I just laugh nervously. He leads us deep into the inner court, past beautiful gardens and elegant wooden walkways. We are brought into a quiet, luxurious private VIP gallery bathed in a bright, mystical light. A polite maid in a pink robe serves us hot tea, and I politely decline a refill, trying to look as refined as possible. As I sit there, the crimson jade around my neck suddenly starts pulsing with a warm, bright light. My eyes drift to 3 ancient mountain landscape scrolls hanging on the wooden wall. I read the historical caption, realizing these paintings date all the way back to the ancient Yinshu Bronze Age. Suddenly, a new spirit in scholar's robes and glowing blue eyes materializes, roaring at me for underestimating his historical knowledge. I sweat drip in my mind, quickly offering a polite apology to keep the peace. He proudly explains that this is the legendary Peach Blossom Starry painting discovered by a Han Dynasty scholar. I inspect the canvas closely, realizing with a start that the paint isn't actually standard ink. The ancient notes explain the paint was crafted from rooster's blood and white stone dust, preserving the colors for 1,000 years. I mutter to myself that whoever managed to preserve such a masterpiece deserves a massive financial reward. I whisper in admiration, completely fascinated by the incredible preservation of the ancient art. Suddenly, a loud, thunderous crash echoes through the quiet gallery as a porcelain teacup is smashed to pieces on the floor. I whip my head around and freeze. Standing in the doorway is a wild-looking elderly master with spiky white hair, staring at me in absolute shock. He storms into the room, pointing a trembling finger at my face and demanding to know who my teacher is. I sweat buckets, realizing my habit of talking to myself out loud just got me into a massive, high-stakes misunderstanding. The scholar Spirit Cho Yu pops up behind me, instructing me to use his legendary name as a cover. I blink, wondering who on earth Infinite Imagination Cho is, but I have no other choice but to go along with it. I puff out my chest and boldly declare that I am the direct descendant of Infinite Imagination Cho. The spiky elder and the vice master gasp in absolute shock, instantly recognizing the legendary scholar's name. The spiky elder rushes forward, his heavy footsteps echoing against the wooden floor. He comically cries about his spilled wine, but his gaze is completely locked onto me like a hawk. I stand respectfully next to the vice master, bowing with my hands clasped as I greet him politely. The spiky elder looks at me with comically wide eyes, eagerly asking if his bookworm brother finally took in a disciple. The vice master frantically waves his hands, denying it instantly and asking if he even knows who Cho Yu is. He chuckles, telling the spiky elder it's perfectly fine if his uncultured brain has never heard of the scholar. The spiky elder scoffs, turning his back and asking to confirm that I am not the vice master's disciple. Suddenly, with a sharp, lightning-fast swipe, he spins around and grabs my sleeve in a vice grip. He yanks me closer, a terrifyingly manic grin spreading across his face as he roars, "He's mine then." The Vice Master goes completely wild with rage, screaming at him to respect the order of things and stop trying to steal my talent. The spiky elder just laughs it off, while I stand between them, sweat dripping and completely dazed. His sharp eyes analyze my body, noting with immense confusion that my hands show zero signs of sword training. He keeps inspecting me, wondering how on earth a plain civilian managed to completely cleanse his meridians. A glowing outline of my energy channels flashes, showing that my body is already at the level of a supreme peak master. His eyes glow as he realizes my inner core has been accelerated by an incredibly powerful external force. He smiles, a look of pure, fanatical excitement filling his face. He calculates that with this momentum, I am on track to achieve a complete energy core within 3 years. He laughs manically, realizing that even he hasn't reached that level, meaning I am a once-in-a-generation prodigy. The two elders start gossiping about my potential, whispering about whether I could actually reach the legendary level of absolution. A terrifying collage of the unrivaled 7 martial thrones flashes, representing the absolute peak of martial power in history. They laugh and chatter in the background while Ji-hoon and I stand there sweating buckets, completely lost. The spiky elder grabs my collar, pulling me comically close as I wheeze that I literally can't breathe. He waves his hand dismissively, completely ignoring my complaints. He leans in, whispering directly into my face and asking if I have any thoughts of changing my family name. He slams his massive family stamp on the table, offering to let me use the Namgoom name if I agree to be his adoptive son. I just stare at him with a completely flat, deadpan expression. Sorry, Grandpa, but my corporate empire is not for sale. Well, that's all for today, and if you want the next part of the video, just comment next part, and yeah, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.